What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Week 4 is in the books, and as always, we have got our weekly NFL game picks outright versus the spread, along with our locks of the week. So let's get right into it. We kick things off on Thursday Night Football with the divisional clash between the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. Both these teams 3-1, and whoever wins this matchup could potentially be in first place in the NFC West. So definitely an important one here. Now, the Rams 3-1 after their first loss of the season, probably the biggest shock result of last week in that huge upset via the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where that Rams defense just couldn't stop anyone. Jared Goff, even though he threw for a bunch of yards, he had costly turnovers, and the Rams, while they got hot towards the end of the game, it was too little too late ultimately. Whereas the Seattle Seahawks, coming off a nice divisional victory versus the Arizona Cardinals in a game that they should have won, and they did, taking care of business. Now, this game definitely on a bigger magnitude for the Seahawks, because even though last week's divisional contest was important, this is a little bit higher because these teams are so close together and probably project to be throughout the remainder of the season. Now, this game probably a pick 'em, to be honest with you guys, and the spread reflects that for the most part. Seattle -1.5 at home. That's pretty close to being 50-50 right here, and I kind of see it the same way. Now, personally, I do like the Seattle Seahawks at home. I think right now they're just the more complete team, and primarily because of the quarterback play. Throughout the first 4 weeks, Russell Wilson has looked like an MVP candidate. He's put the team on his back when the Seahawks haven't been able to rush successfully. He's gotten it done through the air. He's gotten it done on the ground himself. Whereas Jared Goff has struggled a little bit on the road, and I just think that Rams offense isn't the same with Todd Gurley not being the centerpiece, and it's pretty obvious that he is on a limited snap count, and probably the Rams, it makes sense they want to preserve him later towards the season. We'll see if they can effectively do that, if they continue to potentially struggle this year, even though it's only one loss, but I do project this to be the second one. Like I said, right now, Seattle, to me, a little bit more of a complete team. I think it's going to be a very close matchup, even though this game is in Seattle, which ultimately, that with Russell Wilson is what gives me confidence to go with the Seahawks here. This is that classic NFC West divisional clash. I wouldn't be surprised if this series splits, but I'm going to go with the home team here. I think both these teams are going to have a chance to win, but ultimately, give me Russell Wilson for the Seahawks to win outright, and I'll also take them on the spread. Next, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Houston Texans. Both these teams coming off of losses. The Falcons 1-3 after getting dominated, really, at home versus the Titans in a game where, even though they put up a bunch of yards, they really couldn't convert that into too many touchdowns. Whereas the Houston Texans 2-2 after their own ugly, close loss versus the Carolina Panthers. Deshaun Watson kept getting hit. He missed some open targets down the field that could have been the difference to that game, but ultimately the Texans come up short. Now, however, they've got another home game versus another NFC South opponent, and I actually think that these two teams are fairly similar, at least offensively. They're star-studded offensively with guys like Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Devonta Freeman, Calvin Ridley on the other side. You've got Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller. But ultimately, the main problem is the offensive line of these units. We've seen both of these teams put up points and then also have the ability to kind of go away and be held to 15, 16 points on a week-to-week basis. What I really think will be the big difference here is the defensive unit of the Houston Texans. The Falcons, yet again, kind of similar to last year, facing injuries on that defense, have injuries and issues on that offensive line. The big difference for the Falcons is they aren't executing as efficiently on offense, and Matt Ryan committing turnover after turnover. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the unit that I think will be more successful. And to me, that is DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson, because I just think that they're going to be able to beat the opposing defense of the Falcons more often than that of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. And since both of these units have issues with their offensive line, I'll tend to give a little bit more credit to Deshaun Watson because of his scrambling ability. Don't get me wrong, I like the Atlanta Falcons offense a little bit more so, but with all those issues on their defense and with this being a road game for them, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I think this could be a breakout game for DeAndre Hopkins after he's been kind of quiet these last 3 weeks. I look for him to get back on track. I think it'll probably be kind of high scoring. If I had to guess, I'd say that the Falcons make it close late, but too little too late. So for that reason, I will take the Texans outright on the spread, -4.5. I think that's high enough where I'm going to go ahead, take a gamble, and take the Falcons on the spread actually. Like we said, I think the Falcons make it a closer game towards the end of that fourth quarter, but ultimately come up just short. Next, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Tennessee Titans. The Bills 3-1 after suffering their first loss versus the New England Patriots. A result probably a lot of people expected, but look, give them credit. They kept it close, and heck, maybe that result would have been different if Josh Allen didn't get concussed midway into that game. Now, the expectation actually, because of that outcome, is that he might not be available for this contest. If that's the case, then I give the advantage to the Tennessee Titans here because that probably means it'll be the Matt Barkley show for the Bills, and an offense that had issues spreading out the football through the air now faces even more question marks there. On top of that, Barkley not as mobile as Josh Allen, which is something that opposing defenses always had to prepare for. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that Bills defense will keep them in the game for a period of time, but ultimately the Titans were 2-2 and coming off that great win versus the Atlanta Falcons have a defensive unit of their own that can cause issues for that Bills offense. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Titans defense is ultimately going to be the difference maker because of the inexperienced play at the quarterback position for the Bills. Marcus Mariota will be able to do enough. I don't think he's going to have to, be a world beater, and that's probably his forte. Just be a game manager, hand off the football to Derrick Henry, make some plays in intermediate routes to Delaney Walker, to Corey Davis, and then the Titans defensively seal the deal with a turnover or two. So I'll take the Titans at home. The spread -2.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the Titans on the spread. I think they can win this game by at least a field goal. Continuing on, we have got the Chicago Bears at the Oakland Raiders, but not really. This game will be in London, so somewhat of a neutral field. Now, as far as the two teams, the Bears 3-1 coming off a very nice victory over the opposing Minnesota Vikings. That game means a lot for them in their quest to dominate the NFC North, but the big storyline for them is the injury to Mitchell Trubisky, which I actually think can be a blessing in disguise. Clearly, Trubisky was the weakest link of that team, and I do think Daniel can go ahead and provide some things that Trubisky lacked in terms of accuracy. Now, obviously, he isn't as mobile as Trubisky, but I do think he has some of that chemistry with Matt Nagy, so maybe Nagy feels a little bit more comfortable opening up the playbook for that veteran presence in Chase Daniel, and maybe we finally see this Chicago Bears offense have some success because their opponent is the Oakland Raiders, who, look, give them credit, they're 2-2 coming off a victory over the Indianapolis Colts on the road. Derek Carr played well, that defense also played well, but this is a whole nother beast. The Chicago Bears, especially defensively, I think are going to make it a long day for the Raiders. This is the Khalil Mack revenge game. I'd be shocked if he doesn't have almost a career day here. I expect him to force several turnovers and that Bears offense to capitalize. Maybe we also finally have the rookie breakout game from David Montgomery, because at the end of the day, I think that's honestly the formula that the Bears, even if Daniel struggles, that they can rely on and get them to victory. A stout defense, and then just continue to hand off the ball to either Tariq Cohen or David Montgomery and just wear down this Oakland Raiders team. I think they can go ahead and win this game. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not as high scoring, maybe somewhere in the realms of 16-6, 16-10. The Raiders will make the Bears sweat at some point in time, but I don't think this game will be as close as the final box score, if that makes any sense. Kind of like how we saw last week with the Bears and the Vikings. They pretty much dominated that entire game. If it wasn't for, late fourth quarter efforts from Dalvin Cook, the Bears almost would have shut out the Minnesota Vikings. So I think it'll be a similar situation here. I will take the Bears on the road in London. They win this game. The spread plus 4.5 for the Raiders. Like I said before, I think the Bears can win this game by at least 5-6 points. Their defense is just too good for that not to be the case. So I'll take the Bears on the spread too. Moving on, we've got the Arizona Cardinals at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cardinals 0-3-1, the Bengals 0-4, and the question becomes, who gets their first win of the season? Because it has to be one of these two squads. The Cardinals, tough loss to the Seattle Seahawks. I think the better squad won there, obviously. And then the Bengals, man, they got absolutely dominated by the Pittsburgh Steelers. They couldn't get anything going offensively, and I mean anything. And now, look, at least they've got a home game versus a similar type of squad with a struggling defense. But they got some bad news in the fact that John Ross going on IR. That means probably it'll be the Tyler Boyd and Auden Tate show. Joe Mixon, probably look for him to finally have a breakout game as well. But all those positives that we just said about the Bengals, you could say about the Cardinals. Look for Larry Fitzgerald to have a big game. Christian Kirk is going to miss some time. So Fitzgerald is going to become a focal point here. Look for David Johnson to have a big game. Look for Kyler Murray to have a big game. The reason I give the slight edge to the Arizona Cardinals overall is because Kyler Murray and what he can do with his legs, I think that'll provide even more mismatches defensively than they already exist. So to me, slight edge to the road team here, the Cardinals. I could see this being an extremely high-scoring game just because neither one of these squads can stop opposing offenses. And it'll actually probably be pretty interesting, even though none of these teams actually have a win so far. But I'll take the Cardinals on the road to win this game behind a nice outing by Kyler Murray. And on the spread, the Bengals actually favorites at minus 4.5. So since we like the Cardinals all right, we'll also take them on the spread. Next, we've got the Minnesota Vikings at the New York Giants. Both these teams 2-2. Now, the Vikings coming off a loss versus the Chicago Bears, however, in a game where they couldn't get anything going offensively. In Minnesota, you've got Kirk Cousins pretty much just playing abysmally. You've got wide receivers complaining they're not getting the ball enough. Wide receivers complaining that they want to get traded. Then on the flip side, you've got the New York Giants, who are also 2-2, coming off a victory, but it was versus the Washington Redskins, and the Vikings are a completely different beast here, especially defensively. I think this Vikings defense is going to feast on the Giants offense. Saquon Barkley still out of this game. And Daniel Jones, I don't think he's going to have all the success that he experienced his first 2 weeks starting. Look, even in a win last week, he suffered with turnovers. And I bet he's going to throw at least 1 or 2 interceptions here, maybe a fumble as well versus the stout Vikings defense. And if there was ever a cure-all for this Vikings offense, at least through the air, it would be versus the New York Giants. Now, even if Kirk Cousins struggles yet again, they've still got the firepower to win this game. Just hand the ball off to Dalvin Cook like you've been doing all season. He is one of the best running backs in the NFL, like we predicted he would be. He stayed healthy. The Minnesota Vikings offensive line has opened up holes for him. And even if it's just that, again, with that Vikings defense, it should be enough to defeat the New York Giants. I'm going to go ahead and take the Vikings on the road here. I think this is one of the simpler picks of the week. So I'll take the Vikings outright. The spread plus 4.5. I actually don't think that's high enough for the Giants. So I will take the Vikings on the spread there as well. I think they win by at least a touchdown. Next, we go to the New England Patriots at the Washington Redskins and talk about two teams in opposite places. The Patriots 4-0, the Redskins 0-4. The Patriots, nice little victory over the Buffalo Bills. Now they hold first place, no questions asked, in their respective division. Where's the Redskins? Another loss last week to the New York Giants. Dwayne Haskins got some game action, but it didn't really matter. And now in week 5, the expectation is it'll probably be Colt McCoy starting for the Redskins. And honestly, it doesn't matter because this Patriots defense has been one of the best in the NFL. The Redskins defensively can't really stop anyone. I expect big days for Julian Edelman, for Josh Gordon, for James White, for Tom Brady. Maybe even big day for Sony Michel to have a nice breakout contest. And I really don't think the Redskins stand a chance here. No matter who they throw out at quarterback, this is going to be a mismatch. Terry McLaurin, their best wide receiver, he's still questionable. So even if he does suit up for this contest, I don't think he's going to have that much success. Stephon Gilmore has been shutting down absolutely everyone. I expect that to continue. The Redskins don't really have any rushing attack to speak of to alleviate pressure on the quarterback. So all signs point to the Patriots. Don't overthink this one. Take the Patriots outright. The spread is where it gets a little bit interesting since it's so high. Plus 15.5 for the Redskins. I'm going to go ahead and take the Patriots there. I just think that they can go ahead and win this contest by about 16, 17 points. I just don't see the Redskins scoring on this defense. It's a horrible combination for them. So I'll take the Patriots on the spread as well. Continuing on, we have got the Tampa Bay Bucks at the New Orleans Saints divisional clash. The Bucks 2-2, coming off one of the most impressive victories of last week in an absolute showdown versus the Rams, where they put up 50-plus points. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, absolute studs. And then New Orleans Saints 3-1 after a very nice victory where the defense flexed its muscles versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now it's another home game, and the question is, what are we going to see? Are we going to see a high-scoring affair like we did for the Bucks last week, or is this going to be low-scoring in what we saw with the New Orleans Saints and the Dallas Cowboys from the week before? Now, I'd go ahead and wager on the former, and I think that there's going to be a decent amount of points in this contest because, look, the Bucks defense, I do think it can be had. We just saw the Rams drop, 40 points on them. I think the Saints, even with Teddy Bridgewater here, can go ahead, open things up with Alvin Kamara, with Michael Thomas. These two teams know each other pretty well, and it's usually high-scoring affairs whenever two divisional opponents play each other in the NFC South. That is what I am banking on here. The biggest question for the Bucks probably, which version of Jameis Winston will we see? Is it going to be Jameis Winston of the past 2 weeks or the Winston of the first 2 weeks of the season? Now, I bet Bucks fans really hope it's the one that we saw versus the Rams last week, but I do think the Saints defense is a little bit tougher. So that's honestly why I'm going to give the edge to the Saints here. I think behind a nice defensive support here and with big days from Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and good game managing from Teddy Bridgewater, they come away with a close win here. I'm going to take them outright. However, on the spread, -3.5, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here and say that the Bucks will make it a close contest. The Saints win by just a field goal, so give me the Bucks on the spread. Next, we've got the New York Jets at the Philadelphia Eagles, and another example of a game that's probably one of our locks of the week because the New York Jets, 0-3, coming off their bye week, probably will be without Sam Darnold again. He's not 100%, and that enlarged spleen, probably not the thing you want to risk it with your franchise quarterback taking hits consistently because your offensive line hasn't performed. Now, on the flip side, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles, who are at home, who are coming off one of their biggest wins of the season at Lambeau Field. Carson Wentz looked great. That rushing attack performed well. And honestly, this should be another contest where the Eagles find success. I think Carson Wentz is going to have another good game, even though Deshaun Jackson probably won't be available. Look for Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, and Zach Ertz to show up and show out here. And I think this Eagles defense is absolutely going to eat versus this New York Jets team with Luke Falk, the third-string quarterback, under center. I don't care if they've had an extra week to prepare this game plan because they're coming off the bye week. I just don't think it'll matter. It'll probably be just Le'Veon Bell over and over and over. He's really going to get his money's worth, but behind that offensive line that has struggled, I don't think he's going to have that much success. It'll probably be a lot of short dinks and dumps to him to see if he can make anything work. But that Eagles defensive line has been absolutely dominant. They can be had in the secondary as we've seen the Eagles, but I don't think Luke Falk is the type of quarterback to go ahead and take advantage of that type of mismatch. So I think the Eagles win this game comfortably. At home, I will take them outright. On the spread, minus 13.5. With no Sam Darnold, I think the Philadelphia Eagles can go ahead and cover that spread. Next, we've got the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Divisional clash here. The Ravens 2-2 after yet another loss, this time to the Cleveland Browns. Really tough one there because now the Browns are in first place in that division. And all of a sudden, that Ravens defense that we all know has kind of become pretty lax. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, look, they're coming off a nice victory last Monday night versus the Cincinnati Bengals. But this is another type of opponent here, and I realize the Ravens defense has struggled as of late, but they're not nearly as bad as the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are in a league of their own when it comes to defensive ineptitude, and the Ravens offense also more potent here. Their offensive line doesn't have as many issues as that of the Bengals. Lamar Jackson also being mobile, I think is going to create issues for that Steelers defense, which is going to be their main hope here if they want to come away with the win, because we've seen week in and week out that Mason Rudolph does not have it. I mean, that's the reason why the Steelers offensively are running all these gadget plays with sweeps, with direct snaps to Samuels, to Connor, and with all these dink and dumps to those running backs. So even though the Steelers are coming off a win from last week, I just think the Ravens are a much better team than the Cincinnati Bengals. So I like them to win this contest. I think Lamar Jackson is going to cause havoc on the ground, and he'll have some success through the air as well. I'll take the Ravens on the road to win this game. Look, if Big Ben was available, it'd be a completely different story. But with Mason Rudolph, a guy that's clearly a backup quarterback who just absolutely kills the production of guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and some of those other big names, I'm taking the Ravens here outright on the spread. Steelers plus 3.5. I think the Ravens can win this game by close to a touchdown with some turnovers caused by that defense. So give me the Ravens on the spread too. Next, we have got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Carolina Panthers. The battle of the cats. The Jaguars 2-2, the Panthers 2-2. On the rise, let's see which one of these teams rebounds. Both these teams playing with their backup quarterbacks. Jacksonville, Gardner Minshew. The Panthers, Kyle Allen. Now, the Jaguars last week, pretty impressive in their victory versus the Denver Broncos. Minshew made plays when it mattered most, and the Jaguars defense late in that game also flexed its muscles. Then the Carolina Panthers. It wasn't all that impressive offensively, honestly. They really looked bad offensively. Kyle Allen strip sacked 3 times. If it wasn't for Christian McCaffrey, they would have lost that game. But obviously, they also got some help from their defense. Now, I actually think these two teams probably pretty similar situations right now as far as the blueprint they want to follow to win their contests. Have a good defensive support behind an offense that features your running back. Now, I do think Gardner Minshew is the better quarterback of the bunch, but he's been limited throughout the week, so maybe he won't be 100%. And I will say, offensively, I've got more faith in the weapons surrounding Kyle Allen, because Christian McCaffrey, one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in this league, I think he does a lot more as far as pass catching than Leonard Fournette might. And then, in general, the pass catchers around Kyle Allen, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen, I like them a lot more than what the Jaguars have to work with. It also helps that Jalen Ramsey probably not going to play in this contest again. You know, is it injury? Is it him being unhappy? Who the hell knows at this point? But that's a big blow to that Jaguars defense. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, ugly game, pretty similar to what we saw from the Panthers and Texans last week. I will, however, take the Panthers outright to win this game, and a big reason is because of the X factor that is Christian McCaffrey. Now, I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, at all if the Jaguars end up winning here, so I'd probably stay away from this game. It's pretty much a 50-50 pick'em to me because the Panthers also dealing with the loss of K'Wan Short for the season. That's a huge blow for them defensively. He was the most important piece other than Luke Kuechly for this team. But hopefully that transition to a 3-4 defense will be able to alleviate some of that loss of pressure that K'Wan Short would have accounted for. But either way, I digress. Point being, I'll take the Panthers outright because of Christian McCaffrey and what he can do and all those playmakers around Kyle Allen. It should be low scoring, something in the realms of 16-13 if I had to guess. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars pull this one off, as evident by the spread, -3.5. I'm actually going to take the Jaguars there. That half-point extra is what's making me go with the Jaguars. I think it'll be a contest that's decided by a field goal. And if the Jaguars do end up pulling off the upset, we're hedging our bets a little bit. So again, Panthers outright, but the Jaguars on the spread. Moving on, we have got the Denver Broncos at the LA Chargers divisional clash. The Broncos 0-4. Yet another close loss at home. They could very well be 2-2, but sometimes that's the way it breaks. And it seems like the Broncos are destined for a long season. Then on the other side, the Chargers 2-2 after a dominant victory over the Miami Dolphins like we all expected. And guess what? Melvin Gordon should be active and starting in this game, or at least splitting time with Austin Eckler. And that means a long day for this Broncos defense, which not only did it lose Bradley Chubb for the season, but it's also been a defense that has struggled against the rush. And I think that means a great welcome back game for Melvin Gordon, even though he might be on limited snaps. And then also a nice encore performance from Austin Eckler. These divisional clashes, usually close. You know, sometimes the Broncos surprise. But I just think right now, too many things stacked against them and on the road as well. Even if there's a split, I think the Broncos potentially get a win in Denver, not in LA, where the Chargers should get this victory. Offensively, they are just absolutely loaded. Defensively, again, I think they'll be able to do enough to get this victory. So I'll take them outright. On the spread, the Chargers -6.5. And like we did say, look, this is a divisional contest. The Broncos have played some teams a little bit closer than you would expect. So because of that, maybe a little bit of a surprise, I'll actually take the Broncos on the spread because even though the Chargers probably win this game, I think it'll be right by a touchdown. So again, I go with the safer bet in terms of the spread there. Broncos on the spread. Next, we have got the Green Bay Packers at the Dallas Cowboys. Both these teams 3-1 coming off their first loss of the season. The Packers losing to the Eagles on that game-ending interception, whereas the Dallas Cowboys, you know, that Saints defense really flexed its muscles and prevented the Cowboys from getting into field goal range. And I think to some extent we did see a little bit of a clearer picture for both of these squads. For the Packers, it was more so for their defense, and then for the Cowboys, it was more so for their offense when they finally face a good defensive squad. Because up until last week, the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, for the most part, had a pretty easy defensive matchup week in and week out. So I do think this is a more accurate representation, more so for the Dallas Cowboys. And it really doesn't help that Tyron Smith is going to miss some time. He is such an integral part for that offensive line, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, period. That's going to affect the protection for Dak Prescott, the running lanes for Ezekiel Elliott as well. And even though this is a home game for Dak Prescott, I have so much more faith in Aaron Rodgers. It's not even funny. I think Dak Prescott is been average. You know, I realize that his stats would suggest otherwise, but again, I think that's more so because of the defenses he has played. And then Aaron Rodgers, we finally saw that signature game from him last week. Now, I will say the X factor here could be the absence of Devontae Adams. He's not expected to play with that turf toe that he suffered. So it'll probably be the MVS, Geronimo Allison, and more so Aaron Jones show here. I expect Aaron Rodgers to have to air it out. Look for guys like Jimmy Graham to have big games as well. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go and pick the team that I think has the better quarterback To me, that is Aaron Rodgers. Like I said, no questions asked. I think he's more accurate. He's just as mobile as Dak Prescott. So give me the Packers to win this game. I think that defense will have a little bit of a bounce back performance as well. The Cowboys minus 3.5 on the spread, but since I like the Packers outright, I am also taking them on the spread. Getting to Sunday Night Football, we have got the Indianapolis Colts at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Colts 2-2 after a disappointing loss versus the Oakland Raiders. Look, I do think the Colts are a better team. They're more well-rounded of a roster, but we did see that there will be inconsistencies from time to time because of the fact that Jacoby Brissett is under center there. And that Colts defense also didn't really show up either, which didn't help. On the other side, the Chiefs still undefeated 4-0 after a big scare versus the Detroit Lions. But Patrick Mahomes did what Patrick Mahomes has done throughout the entirety of his career, and that is make plays when it matters most. And he delivered a victory for the Chiefs. And I think he's going to do the same yet again at home versus the Indianapolis Colts. Look, even though the Colts have some nice matchups here versus that Chiefs defense, which has had issues since last year, I just don't think they have the firepower to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. Now, the question is, will a guy like T.Y. Hilton play? Will a guy like Marlon Mack play? I'd say the chances of Marlon Mack playing are higher than that of T.Y. Hilton, but we're probably going to have to wait until Sunday to find out. Either way, the Colts probably won't be at 100% offensively. So I'm taking the Chiefs here at home with Patrick Mahomes. No Tyreek Hill, no problems. Damian Williams expected to return, so that'll be maybe a little bit of a boost for them. Maybe the Colts come out and compete for the first quarter and a half, something like that. But I do think the Chiefs pull away here at the end of this game. So I'm going to take the Chiefs outright on the spread, minus 10.5. And like I said, I think the Chiefs pull away in this game late. So I'm actually going to take the over on the spread and go with the Chiefs there as well. Finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we have got the Cleveland Browns at the San Francisco 49ers. The Browns 2-2 after a very important and impressive win over the Baltimore Ravens. Now they find themselves in first place in that division behind a dominant performance from Nick Chubb and Jarvis Landry. And then the 49ers 3-0, still undefeated, coming off the bye week. The question here will, maybe unfairly so, be centering around the Cleveland Browns. That's because, what is this team? Is it what we saw the first couple of weeks, or is it what we saw in week 4? And was what we saw in week 4 a fluke, or is it a sign of things to come? Honestly, I'm not sure yet, because that Baltimore Ravens defense had a little bit of an off day. This 49ers defense on the flip side has low-key been pretty good. And with an extra week to game plan, I kind of have to give the edge to the 49ers here. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to get a good performance from the Browns. I think we probably will, but in a game that is going to be pretty close the way I see it, probably in the realms of 23-20, something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it's decided by a field goal late. I'm going to give the edge to the 49ers, to the team that's coming off the bye week, to the team that's rested, to the team that has a home contest here. And I like Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit more so than Baker Mayfield, so that contributes to it as well. Also doesn't help that Jarvis Landry in the concussion protocol after his big game last week. I don't necessarily think that Nick Chubb is going to duplicate the efforts from week 4 either. And we're again have to see how that Browns offensive line will hold up for yet another contest versus an improved 49ers defense. So I think it'll be close, but I'm going to take the 49ers outright. But I will say this, on the spread, minus 3.5. I think the game, since it probably gets decided by a field goal, since it's close, I'm actually going to take the Browns on the spread. So with that, we wrap up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, we start with the Chicago Bears at the Oakland Raiders in London. Give me the Bears here behind a dominant performance from that defense, specifically Khalil Mack. I think they're going to handle the Oakland Raiders. This could potentially be a Chicago versus Washington repeat from a few weeks before. The Chicago Bears on the road with a game-managing performance from Chase Daniel should get this victory. Next, Minnesota at the New York Giants. Give me the Vikings. Again, another scenario of a stifling defense versus a rookie quarterback that is going to struggle passing the football, is going to struggle rushing the football, and the Vikings should probably get right in this contest, not only on the ground, but also through the air. Continuing on, the New England Patriots at the Washington Redskins. There's not much to say here, folks. New England is better in every aspect than the Washington Redskins. Defensively, offensively, don't get me started. I'm going to take the New England Patriots on the road to win this game. And then the New York Jets at the Philadelphia Eagles. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles at home behind probably a dominant defensive performance due to the starting of Luke Falk. So I will take the Eagles there. And finally, the Indianapolis Colts at the Kansas City Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs at home to win this game. I think the Colts might put up a little bit of a fight early on, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs, too much firepower. They get the victory there. So with that, we wrap up our locks of the week as well. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree with these picks, along with any other questions you guys might have? And as always, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.